The number 2 was actually pretty fun, in my opinion. So this is what it looks like. So it's actually really similar to the one we did in class with the function state machine. So we're going to have rows, which is 5, columns 2, and you said to use idle state, which is like the one you start with. Key 1 is when you enter the first part of the password correctly, and then key 5, and it goes all the way up to key 5, which is the correct password. And then I think it's probably better if I drew it out because it made more sense on paper. So let me just get the diagram I made real quick. Yeah, I found out like once you drew it on paper, like the state and everything, then it'll make more sense. So let me just find it. All right. Is there a way I can draw? So say we have idle, right? And then if you input 0, which is the first part of the password was 01011. If you enter 0, then it'll go to state 1. And then from 1, if you enter 1, it goes to state 2. Then from 2 to 3, you have to enter 0. 3 to 4 is 1. And then 5, 4 to 5 is 1. And then if you're in state 1 and you enter something that's not 1 to go to state 2, like 0, then it goes back to idle. And the same thing here. If you don't enter 0 to go to 3, it goes back to idle. Yeah, it'll all go back to idle if you mess up on the password. And then if you're in idle and you press 1 instead of 0, it'll just loop back to idle. So for this part, the ones that are going to the next state, I had like like this one over here, it's going to be the input, and the output is going to be 1. And if it goes back to idle, then I would have this as the input, and the slash, then the output would be a 0 if it goes to back to the input. So yeah, that's how I did it. And right here, so like right here, with the key idle, key 1 idle, idle, key 2, like that's after drawing the table out. So if you're in idle and we entered 0, it goes to 1. But if we entered anything other than 1, it'll go back to idle. And then for this one right here, represents the key 1. If you enter 1, if you enter 0, you go to idle. And then if you enter 1, you go to key 2. So like the left side is 0, the right side is 1. Oh, shoot. All right. And then here, same thing with the output. So yeah, if you in idle, if you do wait, let me just look at it carefully so I don't mess up the explanation. Because I know this part was a bit confusing when I was doing it, but then I got it. And then yeah, so after you do this part for the going to the next state, and this is just the output from what I was talking about. So like these parts. So then you have the function state machine. You'll have the current state is going to be idle. So you're going to start off as the idle state. Then you have the input I counter and the output. So you're going to have a while loop. Printf, the input should be 0 or 1. And then it's going to scan the input. And this part right here is to make sure that it's only going to be inputted as a 1 or a 0. Because I found out if you did have any input and you put input as a 9, it solves the password automatically. So that's why it's there. So I was like, yeah. So the output, so the input was the current state, which is idle. So the output is going to be output, current state, in the input. And then this is going to print out the output of that. And then depending on what's inputted, it's going to give you the next state. And that's where the if statements come in. So if the current if state is idle, it's going to say invalid, try again after you inputted a 0. After you input a 1 in the idle state. And then if you press a 0 in the current state, in the idle state to get to key 1, it's going to say correct, valid, try again 4 times. And then if you didn't choose the correct password after that from 1 to 2, it's going to go back to idle state because of this part right here. And then yeah, for key 2, if the current state was master key 2, current state is master key 3, current state is equal to key 4. And then since at key 5 it stops, so you can just end it with key 5 saying you got the key, and then return 0. Then int main, you just call the FSM. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
Would you know when you go from 2 to 3, it's 0? Or, like, would it count would it go back to state rather than state I? Would it go back to 1, or because it's technically starting with a 0?
No. So it's like, say if you're in state 3, say you're in key 2, then you messed up on the input to key 3, it's going to go all the way back to idle, and you have to start all over again.
Right.
You have to make sure you have it in the correct order, or else it'll go back. So I'll just do it right now. So 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. Yeah, it works. Then if I do 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, it says invalid, try again, and it starts at the beginning. Yeah. So that made sense, right? I'm going to assume yes. All right.
Yeah.
All right, number 3.
Yeah, I was just